Well, hello everybody. We have some big news coming out of Marvel Studios, but also what could it mean for the future, I think, is also very interesting. And the information, this news, of course, is the fact that Marvel is going to be releasing a new label titled Marvel Spotlight, a banner for a number of new projects that will not be tying into the overall MCU story, that does not focus on the larger MCU continuity. Now, Marvel did do something like this in the comics, so this isn't the first time Marvel has unveiled a Marvel Spotlight banner. And if you look at DC, one of the things that I think DC has done right in the last few years is allowed other directors to take on projects that they have a specific vision for that does not tie into a larger continuity. Like Todd Phillips' Joker, Matt Reeves' The Batman. I loved those movies, and they did not connect to other films I loved, like Man of Steel. So I think that is something that DC did right, is announcing this DC Elseworlds label where they're going to be able to continue to tell stories like that don't connect with James Gunn's DCU, like the Batman Part 2, Joker Folia Do, and whatever else we may get. And so for many years, a lot of us could kind of hoped that Marvel would do something like this, where they could bring in an auteur film director to take a crack at a new version of a character that we already know, but something that would never work inside the MCU. Just a terrible example, but if Christopher Nolan wanted to take a crack at Spider-Man, I know Spider-Man has a lot of issues with rights with Sony and Marvel, so that would be a nightmare, but that would be an example of like, hey, this is a version of the character that doesn't tie into this other version of the character that we know and love on screen. Now, I don't know if Marvel Spotlight label, or the banner I should say, is going to be allowing theatrical films. This article from Marvel, Marvel.com, does not specifically say that. But here's what it does say. It was announced, of course, that Echo would fall under the Marvel Spotlight banner. It is going to be the first project to do so. It does also have a TVMA rating, so you will have to change your Disney Plus settings to TVMA in order to watch it, or you can also watch it on Hulu, which is very, very interesting. Head of streaming Brad Winderbaum, I'm probably mispronouncing your name, said of the decision to launch the new banner with Echo, quote, Marvel Spotlight gives us a platform to bring more grounded, character-driven stories to the screen, and in the case of Echo, focusing on the street-level stakes over larger MCU continuity. Just like comics, fans didn't need to read Avengers or Fantastic Four to enjoy a Ghost Rider Spotlight comic. Our audience doesn't need to have seen other Marvel series to understand what's happening in Maya's story. Now, have a lot of mixed feelings on this. There's some things that get me really excited, like, for instance, we're going to be getting more street-level stories. Like, of course, we knew we were going to be getting Daredevil Born Again, but ever since that rewrite is happening, ever since they're totally restructuring that show, my biggest fear is that it is now going to follow under this Marvel Spotlight banner as well. Now, I do think this show will probably benefit from being under that banner because it's going to be allowed more freedoms. It's going to be TVMA. It's going to be actually grounded and serious and directed for a different demographic. It's going to have a different tone, which is something the MCU itself really needs. It needs something less silly and something that, if you're going to be funny, you actually have to be funny. The jokes actually have to land, or else you're just a non-funny comedy, and that nobody likes that. Not to mention, so many of the MCU projects have fallen for that kind of tone, and I think getting shows like Loki, which is silly at times, but it's also very sci-fi and wacky, is really refreshing. I think Echo is going to be really refreshing because it looks a lot more like that Netflix Marvel tone, which is something a lot of us really loved. And it just adds something different to the MCU. I don't know if they're going to go with the big screen as well for this Marvel Spotlight banner. I certainly hope so. So we could get, like I said, an auteur director to come in and do something totally different that doesn't have to connect to the MCU. But all that being said, all the reasons why I'm excited, the reasons I'm concerned. Does that mean that Echo is not canon to the greater MCU? I mean, we saw her interact with Hawkeye, of course, so we know that that version of Echo at least does exist in the MCU. But the shows and if there are movies that fall under this banner, are they not considered part of the, quote, larger MCU continuity? Because if so, then characters like this version of Wilson Fisk from Echo, who looks fantastic, who looks chilling, looks scary, like he did in the original Daredevil series. Does that mean that version is not canon to the larger MCU continuity? What about Daredevil Born Again being rewritten? There was reports that show was a mess, that Kevin Feige has just been stretched so very thin that he hasn't been able to put all of his creative juices in all of the different shows and movies that Marvel's been pumping out for years now. And they finally looked at Daredevil Born Again. They're like, oh, Daredevil isn't done to show up till like episode 4. Yeah, I think that's a problem. Let's rewrite this thing from scratch. And they are going to be reusing some of the scenes that they shot, but it's getting a completely different rewrite. It's got new showrunners, a writer from Punisher as well. So I think that was all good decisions. But in that rewrite, are they going to be saying, hey, you know what people really loved about the Daredevil show? Karen and Foggy, who wasn't going to be in this show. Let's bring him back. Because this Marvel Spotlight banner allows you to tell a story that doesn't have to be considered MCU canon, right? Which is great. So we can bring the Punisher and get... No question, he'll be TVMA under this banner. If Echo can be, why not Punisher? Why not Daredevil? Which is part of the tone of those shows that made them so special and different to other shows that were going on at the time, like The Flash or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. That's what kind of elevated those shows, as well as the production and the fight choreography and the acting. So Marvel Spotlight banner opens the possibility for all of that stuff from the great things about the Marvel Netflix shows to return to the MCU. But it will fall under this banner. My worry is that it'll only be under this banner. So for instance, yes, we could get Karen and Foggy back. But does that mean Daredevil, Karen, Foggy, and his show are not canon to the larger MCU continuity because it's a street level focus? Now, they don't necessarily say that the shows under this banner are non-canon. That is a large assumption. But what it could mean, which is what it's meant in the comics, is that you don't have to read or watch, for instance, Secret Invasion or Miss Marvel or The Marvels to understand Echo, which I think is great for the larger movie-going audience. But for the comic fans like us, who want to see Daredevil interact with Spider-Man in live action other than just that one little cameo in No Way Home, I don't think that's going to happen under this banner. If Daredevil brings back Karen and Foggy and Wilson Fisk and they go for a TVMA rating, I don't know if Marvel or Sony or whoever makes that decision of, hey, yeah, Tom Holland can pop up here as Spider-Man. And I don't think any one of us know truly the current state of that deal, but I think it would be a larger reach to get Spider-Man in a TVMA Marvel Spotlight bannered TV show on Disney Plus than it would have been if you'd given Daredevil his own movie and just have Spider-Man show up, or have Daredevil show up in Spider-Man's movie, which is totally still possible. So as you can tell, as a lifelong Daredevil fan, I want Daredevil in Secret Wars. I want him alongside Toby. I want him alongside Hugh Jackman. I want the Punisher there. I want Spider-Man there. But with Echo following under this Marvel Spotlight banner, it does allow it to be a better show, in my opinion. My only concern is that it's not going to be considered canon at the end of the day. Not that they're going to do anything to retcon it. I'm not saying, we're going to have a new version of Steve Rogers show up and that it's just totally a different alternate Earth, but it's going to be like the Marvel Netflix shows where they reference Captain America, but he's never going to show up. And Charlie Cox's Daredevil isn't going to show up in Civil War. And we're just going to go right back to that, which I thought we were past that. So I hope we're past that. I hope this is just a banner to allow some smaller characters to be able to be revitalized or to be used. After all, in the comics, characters like Ghost Rider really got to flourish under the Marvel Spotlight Comics banner. And this Spotlight banner will allow creators, directors, storytellers to tell stories that they don't have to be concerned about the greater MCU, which will probably result in less rewrites, so more coherent storytelling, a more fleshed out story overall. Hopefully episodes that are better paced and have more consistent tone. But my biggest worry is that some of these characters like Wilson Fisk, like Echo, like potentially Daredevil or Punisher won't show up in the larger MCU continuity because their stories aren't connected to those stories. I don't know. Will Deadpool 3 be a Marvel Spotlight movie? Does that mean he won't show up in King Dynasty or Secret Wars? Will Echo and Wilson Fisk not show up in those movies because they're under the Marvel Spotlight banner? I think this is a very exciting announcement. I'm not trying to poo-poo on it. I am super stoked for this announcement, and I'm really excited for this show. I think it looks potentially like it could be one of the best Disney Plus shows. I mean, it's just a trailer. Last week, I was writing a most anticipated Marvel projects, and Echo is maybe outside my top 10, maybe crack the top 10. And now it's in like the top 3, top 5 after that trailer. But hearing this Marvel Spotlight banner does get me excited for this show even more. But it makes me worried about characters that I love, like Daredevil, and characters like Punisher. Are they never going to be able to interact with Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, whoever, Thor, Kang? But anyways, guys, that's kind of my rambles, my rant, my thoughts, my concerns. What are you thinking about the Marvel Spotlight banner announcement? What do you think about the Echo trailer? And what do you think the MCU is going to be doing with Daredevil moving forward? Do you think Daredevil Born Again is going to be under the Marvel Spotlight banner? I'd love to hear all your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. If you are new here, please subscribe to the channel, as we are a very small channel and it really does help support us. Thanks so much for watching. Till next time, bye-bye.